Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you so kindly for joining us. Thank you for letting me be a little humorous and play your like 2-year-olds good sports. Thank you. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. My name is Cara Johnson. I'm the event coordinator for Green Apple, and tonight I'm very, very happy to welcome you to our event celebrating Laura Goode's Pitchcraft. It's been a long time coming. Pitchcraft, the writer's guide to getting agented, published, and paid. Let's give a hand for Laura. Laura is joined tonight by Inkoo Kang. Let's give a hand for a really dynamite pair. I do have more to say, but I will say, lest I forget, that I am proof that Laura's book works, because she wrote me a pitch for, not for this, well, you did write me a pitch for this event, but that was a no-brainer. That was an absolute yes. But prior to, I was the recipient of a pitch from Laura, and I was like, yes, I have no choice but to say yes to this. This is so well written and so compelling. I am so glad to be on the receiving end of this. So it does work. That is my endorsement of Pitchcraft. So thank you all so much for joining us here in person. I really appreciate you all being here. Thank you everyone online who is joining us as well. We open each of our events at Green Apple with a land acknowledgement, and so I would like to let you know that we are operating on unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land. We think that by acknowledging that requires action, and so we encourage you to donate either your time or your monetary means to an Indigenous organization each time you hear a land acknowledgement. If you are interested, we have details at the back desk directing you to the Ramaytush Ohlone Land Trust specifically. That is just one way to participate in this project of rematriation if you are interested. I have very brief business before I let these two take over. Now's a good time to silence your cell phones if you have not already. Please do not take a call in the middle of the event, at least while you're sitting here. That would not be fun for you. Photos, I have been told, are good. And only good photos are good. So no bad photos. No bad photos of our authors. Please do, if you have not already, buy books. Thank you so much for buying Pitchcraft. If you've been here before, you've certainly heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, you support the writers who put so much work into making these books, and then you get to have a book, which might be the best part. And because this is Pitchcraft's birthday, I think we should commemorate it by purchasing a copy.
Couldn't agree more.
And bring it home. And then you get to have it signed, and it's a very special occasion. So consider it if you are able. We always appreciate it. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce two writers who are joining us tonight. First, Inkoo Kang is a television critic at The New Yorker. Previously, she was a TV critic at The Washington Post and The Hollywood Reporter and a culture writer at Slate. Let's give just one more hand for Inkoo Kang. I will likely ask you to clap again later, but
and you're
one for now. You will.
Yeah.
That was a great pitch, Laura.
Thank you.
Last but most certainly not least, Laura Goode is the author of a collection of poems, Become a Name, and a YA novel, Sister Mischief. With director Mira Menon, she wrote and produced the feature film Farrah Goes Bang, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival and won the inaugural Nora Ephron Prize from Tribeca and Vogue. She currently teaches at Stanford University, where she was honored with the 2025 Walter J. Gores Award, Stanford's highest award for excellence in teaching. Her book, Pitchcraft, is the reason we are here tonight. Let's give one more hand for Laura.
This is a good room. I'm so happy to see you guys. Thank you for coming out on a Tuesday, for F's sake. I'm going to read a little bit, and I feel like when you're in a bookstore and you're flipping through a book, you usually read the first chapter, but you guys get like the elite bonus experience because you came out on a Tuesday, so I'm going to read from the last chapter, which is where all the juicy parts are. And then Inkoo and I will talk for a while, and then I welcome your questions, concerns, or comments. This is Chapter 9, Break Glass in Case of Emergency, the fire extinguishers of emotional regulation that every writer needs. How shall I leave you? I've poured 20 years of hard-earned creative professional principles into this book, and soon you will close its back cover, having inherited pretty much everything I've ever learned about making a living as a writer. Because I still feel quite emphatically that success as a professional creative rests as much on emotional and psychological regulation as it does on entrepreneurial savvy, I've preserved a few savory life of a writer stories just for this moment, the book's valedictory breath. These stories represent the ways I've encountered some of the non-poverty forces that can sink a writer, and my strategies for vanquishing them. This chapter provides the fire extinguishers you pull out when the vehicle of your ego, work ethic, or stamina hits a tree and bursts into flames. And if you're doing your job with courage and dedication, it surely will. This is like the paparazzi up here. Like my straight parents are here, my gay parents are here, and they haven't stopped taking pictures this entire time. I love you all. Guilty. Unhealthy competition. Once upon a time, in my bartending era of the early aughts, a boy I used to see decided to bring his new girlfriend into my place of employment. I was not pleased about this decision. The boy and I had not stopped doing whatever we were doing together so very long before, nor was I particularly content with that severance. And here he was, with this new gorgeous girl who had the audacity to be another blonde poet from the Midwest, standing at my register asking for 2 pints of Brooklyn Lager. I believe that was the first time I'd ever charged him for a beer. I charged him for 2. On a cigarette break some beers later, the blonde poet, who like most women was half my size, sized me up and declared, "You look hot with a black eye." To date, this is still the most confusingly aggressive thing a woman has ever said to me. I believe I replied with, "Don't tempt me," which is also both aggressive and confusing. Eventually, the poet left with her man, and there I was, a jilted bartender with a punch or two still lodged in the chamber of her fist. So I did what any reasonable, heartbroken 23-year-old poet would do. I went home and I Googled the bitch. In doing so, I made the most offensive possible discovery. The poet was talented, celebrated, and repeatedly published. She was good. This was bad. Then I did the next most reasonable thing. I submitted poems to almost every single journal that had ever published her. A month or 2 later, something truly stunning happened. One of the journals accepted one of my poems. Years later, at the AWP conference, I ran into the editor who had published me. I thanked him for that early acceptance and told him it had been very meaningful to me. He said, "You're so welcome. I was actually on the fence about that poem when I first read it because I'd never heard of you. So I remember, I ran it by the blonde poet. She said you were good and that I should take it." At this, my jaw hit the floor so hard that I probably still have rug burn scars on my chin. I have no idea what inspired this woman to do me this kindness, but if she ever reads this, you magnificent cunt, thank you. I like to tell my students, never underestimate how much of the world's creative output was generated in response to spite, pettiness, or jealousy. I also think that competition can be a tremendously healthy and motivating force if we don't let it spin out of control. While I would hardly classify a frantic, chain-smoking 4 a.m. internet deep dive of my ex's new flame as healthy competition, I'm happy to report that while my preoccupation with her didn't persist beyond graduation a few months later, publishing that poem did lead me to publish more. I now see that 4 a.m. deep dive as a crucial moment. I could have let my envy drive me to do something deranged, like trying to sabotage another woman writer, but instead I let it drive me toward what I actually wanted, which was putting my poems out into the world and seeing them appreciated. Let your rivalries motivate you without letting them consume you. Learn when to walk away. This is going to be really fun to read to my parents. Part of the way I learned negotiation was by fighting my parents on curfews. Yep. The other way was by, my mother agrees. The other way was by producing an independent film. I negotiated around 100 contracts for Fair Goes Bang's cast, crew, locations, releases, licensing, distribution, and much more. The highest stakes contract showdown happened just 1 week out from production. Picture it. It's May 2012. My friends Mira and Paul are graduating from film school at the University of Southern California. Mira and I have spent the last 2 years writing more than 20 drafts of the script and have just survived the crowdfunding campaign to fund it. Mira has savvily recruited an entire crew of film students and recent grads to help us shoot. We have just finished casting our 3 starring roles, thank God, because we're slated to start principal photography next week. My lifetime total experience as a film producer consists of little more than Mira squinting at me over a beer and saying, "You're organized and good with money, you could be a film producer." Blood pressure is running high. I'm working hard to conceal the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing. We are walking into a celebratory graduation brunch with Mira and Paul's families when I get a call from someone claiming to be a lawyer newly representing one of the actresses we've just cast. Allow me to paraphrase our conversation. "That's strange that you represent this actress," I say, "because 2 weeks ago I negotiated a whole signed contract for her with a representative who was not you." "She fired that guy," the lawyer says, "and I'm the new gun in this saloon. Also, she won't be getting out of bed for a penny less than 3 times the figure you already negotiated." My heart plummets into my stomach and out of my butt. The figure this lawyer has just named is half of our total production budget. There is no way we can meet it. We've been excited about this actress and we're shooting next week. I hang up, numb and buzzing. I go back to the restaurant, tell Mira what's going on, apologize to the families, shove 3 bites of Eggs Benedict into my mouth, and go back to the sidewalk to make more panicky calls. One of those calls goes to my then husband, to whom I have been married for less than a year. I explain the situation. "Laura," he says, "you're in Los Angeles. From where you're standing right now, you could spit and hit 100 other qualified actresses. Why are you panicking? Just find someone else." "But I liked this actress," I explain, "because she's internet famous in this one specific way, and she was funny when we met her, and we're a week out from production." "But you have to remember the bedrock rule of negotiation," the husband says. "The person who is willing to walk away holds all the power." It dawns on me that I am standing within 100 feet of 100 other qualified actresses, and I can find another one in less than a week. People do that all the time. It dawns on me that if I give in to this new gun in the saloon once, I'll only have shown him that he can push me around, and then what's to stop him from tripling the rate again? It dawns on me that one of our leads getting paid 3 times more than her co-equals could lead to tension on set. All of a sudden, I can clearly see the path that proceeds by walking away from this petty little shitbird of a lawyer. "Oh my God," I say, "you're right." "I know," the husband says, "so call that dickhead back and tell him he just lost his client her first starring role in a feature." I return to brunch again. I update the whole table. Everyone is invested by now. Mira and the table co-sign the strategy of telling the bad lawyer to go kick rocks and finding a new lead within a week. I return to my new office, a South Central sidewalk, once again. This emotional roller coaster is traveling fast, and shortly after receiving one of the worst phone calls of my life, now I get to make one of the greatest phone calls of my life. "Hello, lawyer," I say. "We will not be signing your new contract. You can go ahead and inform your new client that you just torpedoed her first starring role in a feature film." This mofo hits the ceiling. First he tries condescension. "Listen, I know you want to be a film producer. I'm just trying to help you out when I tell you this isn't how it works." "I am a film producer," I say with all the unearned confidence of youthful hubris challenged. "And right now you're the one sucking at your job." Next he tries aggression. "Well, we had these dates blocked out, so you're liable for lost wages. We'll sue." "Marvelous," I say. "Talk to my lawyer. Bye." No orgasm has ever blasted me higher than hanging up on that guy. He did threaten to sue our production lawyer, who laughed in his face. I never returned a single one of his calls ever again. We did not work with his client. We absolutely found a brilliant actress to fill the role in time, and she remains one of my favorite people. That lawyer may have ruined brunch, but because we were more willing to handle a few days of casting uncertainty than months to years of working with a dickhead, he couldn't ruin our movie. It will be your job as an artist to hold on tight to many things: your sanity, stamina, self-confidence, and savviest collaborators. It will also be your job to learn when to walk away. Never forget that real power is built on both. Fortune favors the bold. Have I ever told you the story of how my young adult novel came to be? It's one of my favorites. The year is 2008. I'm finishing grad school and living in the former Jewish hospital of Brooklyn, now gentrification in progress, apartments in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn. It is important to note this as the pre-economic crash twilight era, when young adult fiction was a hugely growing sector of publishing and the undead were basically tent-poling the entire industry. I'd heard water cooler chat that a dear and brilliant friend of mine from college and grad school, Yvonne Woon, had just signed with a literary agent and sold a 6-figure multi-book YA deal. The agent's name was Ted Molloware, and he was another college friend of Yvonne's and mine. This worked out really well when Ted happened to come to a party I was hosting with my roommates at the Jewish hospital. Against the din of the party, Ted and I shop-talked about how great Yvonne was and how exciting her deal was. He asked me if I had ever thought about writing young adult fiction. Some other important notes. While I had been an avid consumer of YA fiction since I'd figured out how to sneak into that library section around age 6, I had never up to this moment spent a single moment of my life considering writing a young adult novel. I was getting an MFA in poetry, I had written and produced 2 stage plays, I had written maybe 1 short story for an intro-level writing workshop. I had literally 0 experience writing fiction. So what did I say? I said, my God, I think about writing YA fiction all the time. I can't stop thinking about it. I lie awake at night, consumed by the idea. I am convinced that my destiny lies ahead in a young adult novel. Ted, surprised but pleased, asked me what kind of YA fiction concepts exactly had me up all night. Well, I said, stalling for time as I rifled through my repository of ideas, I think it would be cool to write a book about 4 high school girls who start a hip-hop crew and the 2 co-MCs fall in love. Let's have lunch, Ted said. Luckily, I had enough good sense to flesh out my idea more between the party and the lunch. Ted and I met up just before my MFA graduation. He signed me as a client, and he instructed me to write something like the first 5 chapters of the book. I wrote the chapters over the summer, and we sold them as a partial manuscript in fall 2008. The moral of the story. When an interesting person offers an opportunity you don't fully understand, but your intuition still senses a door cracking open, then I don't care how underqualified, terrified, or desperate you might feel, just kick. Kick as hard as you can. You can figure out where to put your foot down later. Kick. That book didn't make me a best-selling author, a celebrity, or a millionaire. It did not land me an interview with Oprah, although my mother did personally write Ellen DeGeneres a strongly worded letter about how much she would love it. But it sure did make me a published novelist. It sure did get me my first literary agent. And it led to many other intangible gains that I will treasure forever. Here are some of my favorites. I got to co-host a Sister Mischief event at my hometown library in the very building where my child self snuck into the YA section, with my high school AP English teacher, the most honorable Betsy Cussler. This was attended by an entire ensemble cast of This Is Your Life. One of my mom's bridge friends wondered aloud why the book had to have so many curse words. The smartest question in the Q&A came from an old spelling bee rival. Just picturing Ms. Cussler's copy of my gay little book, all dog-eared and margin-noted, still chokes me up. At one of our Tribeca screenings of Farrah Goes Bang, a woman stood up, took the Q&A mic, and said, "Hi, my name is Farrah, and I'm Iranian-American, and I graduated from college in 2004, and no one ever makes movies about me, so I just wanted to say thank you." That one comment meant more to me than any ticket we sold or award we won. Remember he who had the balls to bring his new girlfriend into my bar? Some years later, he also spent an entire day personally chauffeuring my ass to 3 different book events in an area where I didn't know anyone else. He married another poet from the Midwest. We're fond old friends. One of those events was at a high school gay-straight alliance. As it wrapped up, a young woman who seemed nervous but engaged came up to talk to me. Avoiding eye contact with rehearsed nonchalance, she said, "Yeah, I made my mom read your book too, and it helped her understand my coming out or whatever." I barely made it back to the car before I started full body sobbing. What I'm telling you is this. Your versions of these moments are waiting for you on the other side of a whole lot of work that, if you're doing it right, will bring you to your knees more than once. The good news is you are the only person who can get you to those moments. The bad news is you are the only person who can get you to those moments. Eyes on the page, ass in the chair. Keep going, keep going. Keep going. Woo! Woo!
All right, well, that was fun.
That was the goss.
I have to say, just as a member of the media, I know that Laura is a kindred spirit because that other blonde poet that she mentions, she is named in the acknowledgments.
She's not. Inkoo's playing with me.
Okay, so this is a book that is essentially about how to pitch.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how to pitch short form nonfiction. It is also a how to pitch a book. Why did you write this book? You could have written so many other books.
I would love to write so many other books. I hope I get to. I wrote this book because I wished I had had it, man. I mean, as I say in the book, I invested, and my parents, who are here tonight, helped me invest quite a bit of money in a writing education, every parent's dream. And as I built a freelance career on my own after that, it seemed really conspicuous to me that not a single professor or class or program in that time had ever breathed a word about, like, how to make a living as a writer, or how to write the email to the editor that compels them to give you the gig that gets you money. And those seemed like fairly important concerns for, like, keeping the lights on, and that was even before I had children. So I really wanted to create a very tip-to-tail guide that would guide people who didn't get to have an MFA either, you know, people who just had a library card. I don't feel like we should gatekeep this information behind the walls of legacy media like the New Yorker, where Inkoo works, or Stanford, where I work. You know, these ideas can't be gatekept within wealthy institutions.
Obviously, the big backdrop, maybe like the raison d'etre of this book is.
Ooh, she speaks French.
Yes, with a perfect French accent. The backdrop of this is the gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Why do you think it exists, and can you talk about your particular approach to getting past the gate, which I found really interesting, and then talk about at length in the book?
Those are both really interesting questions. Okay, getting past the gate is where I want to start.
No, do the other one first.
Okay, I have to do She's so bossy. She's so bossy. I love her. Why is information gatekept? So white men can continue to benefit from it without anybody else bothering them, right? Like, all of this insider information is just information that's concentrated power in the hands of a few individuals. So the basic contention of this book is distributing that event helps a rising tide lift all boats, right? So that's why I believe very strongly in breaking the gate. Okay, and then what was the part that I wasn't supposed to start with?
Tell me about your approach to getting
Oh.
past. Or I guess no. What I really want is tell me about like why you feel like it's, I think, like a political mission of yours.
Yeah.
To get past that gate and help more people pass the gate.
That's so interesting, because I was thinking about first how I've gotten past or strategies I've used for getting past the gate, and then that leads into like how to widen the gates for everybody else. I mean, my mom is here tonight, and I was just raised among so many chatty, charming Midwestern women, and I think that oftentimes as a woman who has not assumed that I'm welcomed necessarily in the professional rooms I've found myself in, like as a film producer, which is like 90 trillion% men, I think that charm was just sort of a survival strategy of like, okay, I'm not going to be too like threatening. You're going to like me. We're going to joke. I'm going to ask about your kids, and then I'm going to triple the quote. Thanks. I think that's a very chatty, charming Midwestern like approach to things. But in terms of widening the gate for other people and why that's a political mission for me, because I want to read those books, you know, like I want to read a wide panoply of books by people of different experiences and backgrounds. And that only happens if the tools that are available to privileged people are more available to everybody. So again, let's burn down the gates, right? Thank you. Thank you.
I also feel like some part of this book must have been informed by your role as an instructor. Can you sort of talk about that, like which elements of that came into play, if you found anything surprising about your students that also led you toward the book?
Some of them are here tonight, and I love them so much. You know, one thing that spoke really loudly to me from like the first moment I started teaching, pitching, and publishing for popular media at Stanford, which is why Stanford keeps me around, is I would hear these brilliantly accomplished AFAB people in particular. I would ask them to introduce themselves with confidence, and they would do something like this. They'd have like their hair in the face, they'd be looking down, they'd be like, so I kind of went to Harvard, and then I got like a really small Rhodes Scholarship after that, and I've only published 2 books. It's not that big a deal. And I just saw, get my hair out of my face now, I saw this serial way that the more, to put it very reductively, the more marginalized a person was, the likelier they were to downplay their own success. And that bothered the fuck out of me, because I was talking to really intelligent, dedicated people who most of the time knew a lot more than they thought they did and were a lot better than they thought they were. And that just pisses me off as a teacher. You know, teachers can't stand to see potential wasted. Like that just like gets under our skin. So I think that once I had more experience teaching at Stanford and I had 5 years of classes that had been majority minority and majority AFAB people, I was like, there's a trend here. There's a meta layer. There's a layer of who assumes that they don't have insider information, who assumes that they need help, who assumes that they're behind. That's part of the interrogation that I'm making here is a lot of these writers that I've worked with are so much better than they thought they are. And that got me going, man.
Working off of that, I think a through line of this book is treating confidence, or at least projecting confidence, like a professional skill.
Mm-hmm.
Can you elaborate on that?
I sure can, Inkoo. I sure can. This is like my greatest passion is confidence. Confidence is the key that unlocks doors that appear to be locked. And this is exactly what I meant when I was like, when you see a door cracking open, I don't care how scared you are, just fucking kick. Just kick. The kinetic force behind the kick is confidence, you know? And one thing that I say to my students all the time, I'm not going to use a sports metaphor, you know, you do miss 100% of the shots you don't take, is the way some sports people would say this. But I think that so many times a talented person sits on a good pitch because they're just telling themselves it's not good enough. And the difference between the idea becoming a story is not making the email 10% better or even 50% better. It's fucking pressing send on the email. And I think that, again, confidence is the gumption behind the finger that presses send.
How do you do that?
How do I personally do that?
No, you don't have like a confidence problem. What I mean is, how do you impart that confidence to someone who may have perhaps a smidge less than you do?
Or like a lot of a smidge less. Like, you know.
People who came to roast me. How do I impart that on people with even a little bit less confidence than I do?
Through the book.
Through the book. I think that the number one thing that defrays anxiety is information, right? And I think that confidence is built on feeling informed. And that's why I'm portraying this as like, this is all the insider information that used to be gatekept and you can have it now, right? You can be informed. I think that you know, I can't psychologically rewire every person in the world, much as I would hope to, but I do think that information tends to attack anxiety at its root.
I think at the same time, I think you are a very, like, you are like an advocate with this book, but I think at the same time, you're not just like out there trying to like cannon launch people into like the very first opportunity they come across. And so I think I would be accurate in unroastingly describing you as a hyper-ambitious young person.
Young person, yay!
I wrote down one time hyper-ambitious young person, and then I was like,
I thought she was calling me young.
that might be too rude.
Yeah.
Anyway, how do you try to like balance that like sort of go-getter energy with perhaps not being too impatient for success?
Not my forte. God, impatience has body wrestled me to the ground like every day of my life. I don't think I'm ever not going to struggle with that. Tell me the question in simpler terms.
What is your approach to telling someone what to do with their impatience?
I see. Well, they don't like it. The students don't like it very much when you just tell them to work harder. And frankly, Stanford students don't need a lot of encouragement to work harder. They're already working too hard. I'm likelier to tell them to go out and like party. But I do think that in addition to information, another thing that can rebalance anxiety is just community and remembering that you have a body too. You know, I think that this is where I've gotten lost a lot of the time is forgetting that my body is not just a plant stand for my mind, right? And I feel like I have this experience maybe like once a month or once a quarter, and I am not making fun of these students, I was these students, but a student will show up in my office hysterically crying, like inconsolable, right? And they'll say to me, so they're freaking out about a paper, and they'll say to me, like, I'll ask them, have you had lunch? I'll say, what was the last time you ate and slept? And they'll be like, well, I will deserve to eat lunch and sleep once I publish my research paper as a cover story in the New Yorker and also make the Forbes 30 under 30 list by the end of the week. And then I sort of walk them back and I'm like, okay, how about a sandwich or a walk, or call a friend. And then they come back a week later and they treat me like some sort of oracle because that made them feel better. And I'm happy to take the credit. But I do think that like anxiety is a very cranial sensation, right? It's a very, very cranial experience. And I think that sometimes the answer of getting out of the brain of anxiety is getting into the body, as hippy-dippy as that sounds. Thank you. Thank you, Snaps.
There's like a part of me that thinks you must have written this like in having like a reader encounter this book in a bookstore in mind because you started in a very fun way.
By failure?
By which I mean you just list a bunch of your failures.
Yeah.
Why did you start the book that way?
That's a sweet question. I love it when my friends ask me about my failures. I think I started that way because of what we've been talking about with confidence. That I do feel like confidence is a performance, but I feel like internally felt confidence is actually a very hard-won gift of maturity. And I spent a lot of my early life like achieving pretty hard, as we covered in the book and the reading, and I think part of me thought that maybe I could just keep dead sprinting and keep getting lucky and sort of continue the rest of my life that way. And then I hit my 30s and I had 2 books that completely failed to sell that I had devoted like 8 years of my life to. And I had these children at home that seemed to expect me to feed them like multiple times a day too. Like it was a very ongoing demand. And I had to really come close to the ugliest parts of myself, like the ugliest parts of my own narcissistic self-loathing. And be like, well, why do I assume that I get to skip the line? Why do I assume that my life is just going to be this like orgiastic flame of nonstop achievement? Why do I think that's a good thing? Why do I think that's like a fun way to live? Why am I doing any of this? And I think that what happened was I had gotten rejected so much. Like I went through like 150 to 200 rejections on these 2 books. Like everybody passed on them. And it hurt so much that I had to go like 10 layers deeper into why do I write? Like, would I write if I never got published again? Was the question that I asked that like really begins this book. Wow. And when I tuned in with that question, like the Laura inside Laura was like, you bitch, yes! What are you talking about? Why are you torturing yourself this way? You're just a little kid who wants to staple construction paper to printer paper and make books. My mom is nodding because she helped me. She took me to the library too. We can blame her for everything. The YA section? Yeah. Blame her for all of my literary achievements is what I mean, of course. I think once I got close to failure, I also got closer to my own intrinsic motivation, which was I just wanted to play. I just wanted to create. And it didn't actually matter what the capitalistic outcome of that was. That wasn't part of my spiritual mandate. So I had to open this book with a feeling of credibility with the reader that I really did understand how bad rejection was and how low it could bring a person and what it had taught me, once I was brave enough to look it in the face.
And there are also coping strategies of how to deal with that rejection in the book.
Thank you. What a good hype woman.
I think this book is fundamentally about marketing or branding oneself. I think,
self-presentation, I would call it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think there is sort of, I think like the sort of like loftier you think of yourself as a writer, the more skepticism there can be about considering marketing or branding fake or inauthentic. Mm-hmm. How would you respond to that?
I mean, wouldn't we all love to be J.D. Salinger in the woods, never tweeting and just committing acts of sexual predation while publishing bestsellers? Like that would be, obviously we're not here to do the sexual predation, but it'd be really nice to not have to be on Twitter. That's not the world that we live in, you know, that's just not the world that we live in. We live in a world with constant noise, constant distraction, like constant attempts at branding all around us. I am obviously not here to be like angel of marketing, brand yourself down to your blood, you know? But I do think that in a changing industry, writers are all creatives are very well served by having self-advocacy tools. And I think that the self-advocacy tools are more important to me than the marketing tools. Like, I think that's the reason I'm going so far into the psychological guts of this is that's what actually produces self-advocacy. That's not about, like, you know, the banner on your Instagram page. There's no banner on an Instagram page. What am I? I'm 100 years old. You know what I mean? So yes, self-advocacy is, I think, how I would direct that.
I think one of the ways that this book is very you is that it is a book that is very much about emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I think this book is full of incredibly good practical advice, but woven through all of that is sort of like, here's how to not let being a writer feel like the most miserable experience.
Yeah, here's how to not die of narcissistic self-loathing.
Yes. Yeah. Can you sort of talk about like your thought process through why you wanted to include that emotional element in the book?
I think it comes back to the students sobbing in my office and how frequently highly qualified they are and how their issue is not gray matter or dedication or motivation or any of that. It's actually just being able to center within what they want enough to act upon it. And I think that I don't think that we can talk about how hard it is to be a creative without talking about how hard it is to keep going as a creative. There's no creative whose career is just one orgiastic flight of success after success after. That's not how it works, you know, not even for like the really dazzling people. So I think the people who have long careers are the people who have built sustenance strategies for the times when the voices of self-doubt are loud and things don't feel good. So I think managing how we feel is a really important and impactful part of what we produce.
This is my final question, and then we'll do a Q&A.
Prepare your questions.
And also, this is not a question that pertains to your book, but since you teach a course on the personal essay, can you talk a little bit about how you have seen that genre play out over the last 20 to 30 years, particularly on the internet?
Oh, we don't have time for that. I would love to talk about that so much. I teach a whole class on it. I think that in the early 2010s in particular, the personal essay became a venue for emerging women writers that hadn't existed before. I think it also exposed those writers to a lot of online abuse and toxicity without offering them very many protections or compensation for that trouble. So I think we saw kind of a bell curve of a trend of this industry kind of exploding, and then a lot of venture capital money went out of media too. You know, like this, the era I'm describing is the era that like VC money was pouring into BuzzFeed in like 2013, right? And the bottom really fell out of that. So I think one current note I would observe in that is I think a lot of that essay writing has moved to Substack because there just aren't as many media venues for it anymore. But it's a dynamic and shifting landscape in publishing and media, which is a really like nice way of saying the bottom's falling out, and we all gotta hang on wherever we can.
I love being on the Titanic as
that's right.
I feel the water.
We're just playing on our little string quartet, you know, hoping the music keeps going. Does anybody else have a little question? Or a big question? Or just a really good story about the time they Googled their boyfriend's new girlfriend?
I can also ask more questions.
Oh, I know you can.
Okay.
Oh, I know you can.
Hi.
Hey. Oh, wait. Can
sorry.
we get you to use a mic?
Oh,
Oh, you know what?
No, you
We'll
just
just
talk
have
and then
it
we'll repeat it.
I'll project. Hello.
Hello.
If you were pitching somewhere for the first time today, where would it be?
The Coyote Media Collective.
Well, thank you so much.
It's a really exciting new Bay Area media collective, of which my friend Rawa is a constituent. No, for fucking real though. Like, our friend Manjula Martin recently wrote in Ziziva, The Bay is Back, as a cultural destination, as a place where things are happening, where media is being produced, and like I am on that train. I am so ready for that. So like that's a sincere answer. I think I would pitch the Coyote Media Collective, and I think you should hand out your business card to everyone else here who wants to do the same.
Business cards.
Fair Media Collective.
We launched yesterday.
But also, congratulations.
Yay!
This wasn't the effect I thought that was.
My first job in San Francisco was at a media startup called Karma Magazine that definitely doesn't exist anymore. This was like the first .com era, and there was all this money pouring in, and they had a helicopter, and then it didn't exist anymore. And so that tells you how the money was being made. So do better than that with your helicopter. Get good insurance.
If you are a young writer out there, you will write for so many publications that no longer exist, and
God,
they
that's
never
so
even
true.
had a helicopter in the first place.
Yep.
Other questions?
Hi, Sanjay.
Hi. So, you mentioned that you wrote this book partially for people from the margins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, people, like AFAB,
Yeah.
people of color. One thing that I notice in the media is that marginal identities are used and exploited when they're of interest to the dominant power structure. How do you recommend that people move through their careers without being cast aside or being labeled as just a writer who writes about an identity and doesn't write work that is capable of being universally understood or engaged with?
Say it louder. Thank you for that question. That's one of the most challenging questions that I think the material in this book presents. Because tokenization is so real. Pigeonholing is so real. Reducing people to one prong of their intersectional identity as a way to tell a story. Such a bad habit of traditional media and publishing. And getting back to the psychological part of it, I don't think any of us can reasonably hope to control everything about how we're perceived, right? And in fact, we can make ourselves very sick in the process of trying to control everything about how we're perceived. So I think the best advice I have there is choose your allies really wisely. I think that a big part of how people get past gates, the sort of proverbial gates we're talking about, is by having a good team, having good allies. I always tell people, if you're looking at agents, you need to look through that whole roster of who they represent, and if there's one face of color amidst 50 authors, keep it moving. That's not the right agent, right? I think looking for allies who share your values is one part of the way that we rise the tide of all boats. But I just want to acknowledge that what you're saying is super real. And I don't think any one of us as an individual can possibly hope to tear that down in its entirety. But I do think that a whole bunch of us pounding on those walls has a better chance, right? Yeah. Thank you for that question. You guys are smart. You're asking good questions.
Wait, can I ask? Oh, please, go ahead.
Hello.
No, it's your turn.
Hello, random
Okay.
woman I've never met before who might be an alum of my class and now my publicity associate. How are you?
I am great, even better after hearing you speak about your brilliant book. I was really curious about what you feel, especially putting out a craft book right now, where you feel publishing and the new front of media is really headed.
Oof. Well, here I am to make major market predictions. This again goes back to in a changing landscape, in a volatile landscape, in a situation where the bottom might be falling out, and we might be playing in our string quartet on the Titanic. We have to have all the tools possible available at our disposal. I was about to say it, or dispense. Thank you, not dispensary, disposal. Thank you. Yes, the dispensary can also be a great ally to the creative process. Personally.
And necessary.
A necessary ally to the creative process. I can't predict where the market is heading, but I know that I have had a versatile career where I've worked in a lot of different sectors, and in each of them, knowing something about other ones has served me every time. So I don't think any one of us can reasonably hope to have a career that's just one succession of best-selling novel after best-selling novel. I think we need to know how to do a lot of things, which is why I'm excited about versatile media collectives that are sprouting out of a changing cultural landscape in the Bay. So I'm just all for creatives having a whole toolbox. That's my whole thing. That's not my whole thing, but it's a big part of this. I think we probably have time for one more question. Yeah. Or again, a really good gossip story from your past. I've already shared some of mine. Oh, hello, another random woman I've never seen before. What could you possibly have to say?
You said at the start of the conversation.
Get her.
Well, you said that commercial success was not the only way you were measuring.
Yeah,
Success
I
is
had to
bigger.
move away from that for myself. Yeah.
And I wanted to know, what are these other ways that you find gratification, reward? How else do you measure success beyond just, the big pitching book deal and the rave reviews everywhere?
I'm so happy that you asked that question because I have the most touchy-feely feminist professor in Northern California answer possible. Which which is just that sorry, I totally forgot your question. What did you just say? I had a whole preamble.
This is a dispensary
and then
all over again.
There's been no trips to the dispensary. What did you redux for me? What you just asked?
I mean, how else do you measure success beyond
Thank
the
you.
commercial?
That brought me back. Joy, play, and flow. I had to actually quantify this for myself. What are the principles of creative activity that just feel fun and where I forget how much time is going by and where I feel like I've accessed a state of childlike joy? Joy, play, and flow. And that's I feel what I'm constantly trying to encourage my students towards too. It's so easy to try to hit the brass rings of achievement. But if you're not having fun along the way, what the fuck is the point, right? So I think I really had to recenter joy, play, and flow in my life rather than byline, author bio, achievement, which is ironic because this is a business book. But we're going to do it all together.
Thank you, Elizabeth Gilbert.
I have never in my life attempted to murder a lover, and I want to say that on the record, okay?
Give it time.
And scene. Please buy the book. Thank you so much.
I'm going to tell you.
Oh,
I'm gonna tell them
they're going to
too.
tell us. Yeah.
Can we have one more hand for? That was really fun, guys.
I had
Thank
fun.
you. That was.
I had a really good time.
I had a terrible time.
She's a hater.
That was really. I personally needed that. I hope
We
you all
need you,
did
Kyle.
too. The Bay is happening, and you're.
The Bay is back. The Bay is back, baby.
So I will be brief. This was super fun. We have copies of Pitchcraft at the front register. You can find them there. The signing line will begin right here, where I am right now. I'm going to set you up at this table. Let's give our author a minute, a beat to kind of get together. If you have any other questions, do let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Car Johnson and Green Apple Books, cultural stewards of the Bay Area. We love you.